There it is. Hi. Welcome to Olio. I don't know why that microphone was not working. Anyways, welcome back to another episode of Olio. My name is Elijah, and today I have an interesting topic that I'm very excited to talk with you about. I do apologize if my voice sounds a little gravelly or funky. I'm feeling a little under the weather today. Hopefully it's just that, a little bit under the weather and nothing more, but I guess time will tell. Today's topic is about being overwhelmed and being in overwhelming situations that we find difficult for us, because all of us go through that and end up in situations where we're not overly comfortable, or sometimes that we don't even want to be in, right? Admittedly, most of the time I plan out these conversations a little bit more than I have prepared for today. Today was very kind of last minute, and because I had I'd say an overwhelmed day yesterday. And yeah, I guess let's break into that. Let's break into yesterday. So for me, a notoriously overwhelming place for me is the mall. I think I find it overwhelming because there are so many people, and there's lots of different music, lots of different sounds. It's very overstimulating for me personally. And so I went to the mall yesterday with my friends, my best friends, and we went to go kind of hang out, and we had some plans for errands and other things afterwards. And by the time I'd gotten there, it was probably early afternoon when I got to the mall. And I realized on the ride there that I'd forgotten to take my meds that morning, of course. And by the time I was leaving the mall a few hours later, I feel like I was very out of it. My friends definitely noticed. They were like, "Bro, like, are you good?" Because I could tell I was in that very overstimulated state of mind where, sometimes, like, if you're not, you don't feel in control as much anymore. So, like, everything, like, every sound that was happening felt loud. Every light felt extremely bright. And that kind of happens to me when I get overwhelmed. Those are some of the ways that I feel with different things. I could tell it was happening, but I was in a situation where I really couldn't back down from it at the mall there. Like, it really came down to when I left and I needed to sit in my car and be like, "Oh, okay." And I did some breathing exercises, which I have this app on my phone, which has been like awesome. Because I can open it up and it just I just like the box breathing, inhale, hold, exhale, hold type of thing. And it plays a little animation on my phone. And I needed to use that yesterday because it's very tough when you're in an overwhelming situation like that. For me, it's very tough to not just freak out and let all of that kind of confusion and crazy brain activity manifest itself into crazy bursts of energy and let it out, and it just makes you, that is when I find myself falling into a panic attack, is when I'm, that devolves into energy that's just trying to be expelled, and then I'm shaking and my heart gets, starts doing weird things. Like palpitations, different things and all that. And then you start to breathe really fast. And that is how I end up falling into a panic situation. So whenever I feel myself starting to be overwhelmed, I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, okay, let's be careful about this, because, I don't want to end up there. I don't want to end up in a panic situation. So I try to be like, okay, you'll be fine. Let's drink some water. Let's do some breathing exercises. It's just tough when you're in a place where you can't really do those things, such as the mall. So I had to kind of fight through it a little bit. And my friends noticed, like, they told me it kind of came out in the form of being loopy. Like, they were like, dude, you seem like, and I felt very tired too. It's like very groggy and just like, la la la, and like making weird sounds and just hyper fixating on different things. Which I think makes sense, because when there's, again, when I'm feeling overstimulated, I'm getting all of these different, my brain is getting all these different, all this information from different things, and it's just being like blown out of proportion in a way where now I'm overwhelmed. So yeah, in this case, I was fortunate enough that I was able to like head out of the mall and go into my car. I was going to go grocery shopping after that. And I was smart because we were trying to figure out, there were other things we wanted to do yesterday. We were like, oh, we had a couple other places we wanted to go. And I told, I had to say like, okay, I need to be smart about this, because I could feel myself devolving into something really not great if I go and do these other things. So it's probably smart and probably best for me to just do the bare minimum of what I need to do, grocery shop after the mall, and go home, take my meds, relax, before I really, sink into something that I don't like. So I went into the car, and again, I did my breathing exercise for a couple minutes there. And then I went grocery shopping with my friends, and we were okay. But yeah, it's tough when you're put in those situations, because sometimes, as I've found, like, sometimes you are in control of the situation and you have the ability to take the time you need, and other times you don't. So, I mean, there's so many layers to this. I'm trying to think of where I even want to start. So I think in this case, this was a situation where, yesterday was a situation where I was able to control the situation physically, right? Like, I was able to say, okay, this physical environment is too much for me. And I was able to go to my car and drink water and make my body more happy with me and breathe and bring things down so that, I wasn't going to bounce off the walls and go crazy or anything. And of course, I didn't have my meds that day either, so that surely didn't help. I took them when I got home, but I had forgotten to the morning. So that surely didn't help. But, yeah, I was able to control that situation physically and tell, give myself a happy place to go to where I could relax and recalibrate a little bit. Now, a situation that comes to mind where I couldn't do that, there was one time when me and a friend were going out to breakfast one day. This is the last most recent memory that I have in my head of a time when I was having a panic that I wasn't able to rein in. I wasn't able to take control of it. And it built up and really blew up in my face, that this day that I'm talking about here. It was a friend of mine. We went to go to breakfast, and it was after, this is like really pushing it. So most of the time my medication helps for this, but in this case, I stayed up the entire night beforehand. It was an all-nighter, I'm pretty sure. If it wasn't an all-nighter, it was very close to it. So we're already starting things off on a great foot, right? So I stayed up the whole night, and then I drank coffee before breakfast. So I was on an empty stomach, drank a thing of coffee after staying up the whole night, and then got in the passenger seat of a car. I'm somebody who is susceptible to getting motion sick pretty easily if I am not driving. Now, if I'm in a good state of mind and my body is in a happy place, and my mind isn't running and I feel like chill and good, I can sit in the passenger seat all day long and it's no problem. But sometimes, like if I'm already starting to be overwhelmed, I'm already starting to, if I'm in a overwhelmed place a little bit, then the passenger seat can be the last straw before things really fall apart for me. And I was not being responsible in this day because I was not even caring. I was like, oh yeah, we'll go get breakfast. We'll stay up all night. I'll have my coffee. Like I was not thinking about myself at all and how all of these things would pile up on me. I was not thinking about that. But anyways, this day we go to the breakfast place. By the time we get to breakfast, after sitting in the passenger seat, I was quickly falling into a panic. And this was a situation that physically I couldn't control because guess what? I was out for breakfast and like, sure, I could physically choose to go home or something like that, but I can't change the way my body feels, which is overtired, and I just drank caffeine. That's why coffee for me has been a very big thing. I've been getting better with understanding when I can and cannot drink coffee or caffeine. I'm trying to not drink coffee as much as possible because that caffeine can do really nasty things that you can't undo once you've already started, right? So that's why this case was really rough because I drank caffeine, drank coffee, and my body starts to get crazy and energetic. But with caffeine, it does this to your body chemically, so you can't do anything about it when your body starts to get like that from caffeine-induced stuff. You can't do anything. So it kind of makes this, you feel like really helpless in that moment too. So I was out for breakfast. I had stayed up all night, so I was exhausted, but yet trying to hype myself up on coffee, and my body was so messed up. I was shaky. My heart was going crazy. I was dizzy. I could barely see, and I needed to leave breakfast. I didn't even eat a bite. And I remember I sat outside by the river in the center of Goffstown with my friend. And I felt so bad because like we hadn't known each other for that long at this point. So I was like, hey, nice to meet you. Also, we sat there for probably like a half an hour. And I tried so hard to rein everything in. And I used different apps on my phone. And I tried to do breathing exercises, tried to do all these things outside in the fresh air, drink water, whatever. And I couldn't get it. And it was because I was not smart. And I stayed up the whole night and then drank caffeine. So I was like all over the place, a mess, so overwhelmed. And in that case, there was nothing I could do about it. So that point on, like, and the first time I ever had a panic attack that was like really major was, I made a video about that time about a couple years ago now. And it's still a learning process for me to figure out what I can and cannot do and what will make my body upset and what won't. My mom just said in the chat, hi mom. She said, so sorry I passed the panic attacks to you, kiddo. DNA for the win. DNA for the win. Hey, you and me both, mom. You and me both. We're doing this. I remember the first panic attack I had, again, all the way up until now, and like, it's a learning process because, most of the time, one of these things doesn't set me off alone, right? If I don't take my meds for a day, if I forget, by the way, I'm very adamant about my meds. I know in this case, I'm very, like, sometimes people aren't, like, very steady with it, but I'm very adamant about it. I wake up and I take my meds. Like if I forget about it or I don't take it for a day, it's because I truly forgot. But yeah, if I don't take my meds a day, if I forget and I realize halfway through the day, most of the time that's not enough to just make me descend into chaos, right? And if I drink caffeine on a day when my stomach is full and I feel happy and good, if I drink coffee and have caffeine in my system, that's not enough to just make me explode either. Same with staying up really late. If I stay up really late and I'm exhausted the next day, most of the time that's not going to make things go really wrong. It's when I start mixing those things that things start to go south sometimes. So that's what I'm learning. It's a learning process. I'm figuring out what really sets me off and what doesn't. And from here on in, I think it's just, hopefully I can figure that out and refine that even more so that I'm taking the best care of myself, but also allowing myself to kind of indulge in some of those things that are fun in the moment, but may not always, be the best, most healthy thing for me. But also, like the thing is, I had this situation with coffee where a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my friends and I was like, all right, I'm not going to have coffee anymore. No more. Zero. Nada. Which is how I was a couple years ago. Because also on top of like, here's a tunnel hole for you. Coffee for me has always been rough on my stomach, like really rough. I have like, I know that this is almost too much information, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. My poop after I drink coffee is rough. So coffee in general, I don't tend to drink because of that. My stomach hurts. So that combined with the caffeine situation made me go, okay, I'm not going to drink coffee anymore. Zero. Nada. I'll go back to how it was a few years ago and stick to only tea. But the thing is like coffee is so good. Coffee is really good. Like, dude, if I go to Dunkin' Donuts and I get a iced caramel macchiato, like that stuff is so good. Yeah, see, my mom in the chat says that too. Coffee poop be like, yeah. But I learned that, okay, I've been trying to figure out the past month or so, like, all right, so I said no coffee, but I really like coffee. So what if I'm smart about it and I only have coffee every now and then, maybe when I'm on a full stomach, maybe when I've had plenty of sleep so that my body is already feeling awake, and then we have the coffee versus, oh, let's just wake up after, 2 hours of sleep the last night on an empty stomach and drink a whole bunch of coffee. That's not necessarily smart. I see a few messages, one from Kojo that says, being overwhelmed is rough and panic attacks are not fun to say the least. But I agree. It's a learning thing. Figure out what doesn't work for you and what does. Kojo, that's it. Yeah. It's all about figuring out what's going on. And I'm doing that, I think all of us have to figure that out in one way or another. And for some folks, it's more intense than others. But, I think it's also about, like I'm saying here with coffee, find what is in your comfort zone and, stay there with things that are in your comfort zone and make your body happy. But also figure out the line of like, what can you do that's making you comfy, but also allowing yourself to try these other things and allowing yourself to grow, right? Because if you stay exactly in your little bubble of things that only make you comfy, it's tough to actually grow from that. And I've found that when I was doing that, when I was putting myself in a spot saying, well, you know what I'm most comfortable doing? I'm most comfortable when I lay in my bed pretty much all day and I just, maybe sit on my phone or play games and eat like a meal a day and just sit in bed. And that's it. That's when I'm the most comfortable. And that's when because guess what? I'm not doing anything. I'm super comfortable. It's great, if you do that, but I'm not doing anything then. And so I'm trying to learn to give myself some leeway of pushing myself and now saying, like, giving myself the schedule for content creation and saying, okay, I'm going to do my best to podcast on Tuesdays and have a video on Wednesdays. It may not always happen, but I'm going to certainly try my best to make it happen. Even when I'm not feeling great, like today I woke up and like I said at the beginning of this episode, I'm feeling a little under the weather. So I'm not feeling amazing, but I was like, you know what? We're going to get up and we're still going to do this. It's outside of my comfort zone. What would I really like to do? Probably lay in bed and do nothing. But I think it's wise for me to push it a little bit, just push the envelope, but just a little. And that way I'm growing, and I'm not just allowing myself to be stuck in the same spot forever. Yeah. So I guess that's really what it comes down to, Kojo. That's a good way to kind of encapsulate this whole conversation into one, like one or two sentences right there. Yeah. Find out what doesn't work for you and what does. Yeah. I guess let's kind of pose a question here, and I'll try and come up with an answer for it, because I like to pose a question at the end of these podcasts. Kojo says, push out of your comfort zone, which expands it and makes your life more interesting. Yeah, for real. For real. My question today, which you can kind of think about for yourself, and I'll invite you to ponder with me. There are so many different things we could ask and have us think about in this conversation. But what I would like to say is what can you do, or what do you do? Maybe both. What do you do, and what could you do better when you find yourself in a really overwhelming situation, when you are being overwhelmed by something? What do you do now, and what could you do? And if you don't know what you could do, that's fine. We all have an idea perhaps of what we could do, but it's maybe not the best thing that we could do, but that's okay. Again, like we're saying, we're growing. We're growing. I'll say what I used to do, what I do now, and what I could do better. When I used to be overwhelmed, before I realized that, this is a delicate spot here to touch on here, but I'll get into this. What I used to do if I was feeling overwhelmed and feeling anxious is almost nothing. Almost nothing. If I was in a stressful situation a couple years ago, I didn't realize that I had, anxiety, and that I struggled with different things. So those were even things that happened to people, like panic attacks. I didn't realize that was like a thing. So, for me, I would do almost nothing, and a lot of times it came down to, I used to be very, very religious. I'm not so much now, but, I used to pray. That's basically it. Saying, take me out of this situation, right? That's mostly what I used to do. And a lot of times it's strange because my perspective on it was so different on the situation. A lot of times when I was feeling stressed or anxious, I would place the fault of my feelings on the situation and say, this situation, it's all the things going on here. I'm fine. I'm fine. And a lot of times my prayer, would be to take me out of the situation, to make the situation different so that I would be happy. And it was all about the situation and less about me. I was not very focused on myself and what I needed. I was more focused on what, the situation around me was doing and why isn't it changing for me. Now is different, and I'm not as religious now, so I'm much more focused on me than the rest of the situation, because I realize the situation is what it is. It is what it is. And I have to take what comes to me and choose how I want to interpret it. And if I can't choose how I want to interpret it, because sometimes it's too much for me, it's not the situation that's at fault. I have control to either bring myself out of that situation or something like that. Like I'm the one who's in charge, not the situation. And I need to do what's best for me. So that's kind of the way that I look at it now. And what I could do better is perhaps even more of that. Because sometimes I feel like if I'm with friends or I'm out doing something somewhere and I'm feeling anxious, like I still sometimes succumb to the pressure of being like, oh, well, if I need to leave right now because I'm feeling really, if I need to go take a breather, it's going to look really weird, or people are going to be like, oh, dude, are you okay? Like, and, it's going to be awkward. But I think I've begun, I've started to get good at that. Like just yesterday when my friends wanted to go do something else and we had other fun plans I wanted to do, and I had to say, okay, I'm sorry guys, but like, no, I know things are going to turn nasty for me right now. I'm not in a good spot. Couple months ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that as much, right? Even a couple months ago, I wouldn't have been able to just be like, no, I'm sorry. But I think I need to, perhaps get there a little bit more. I have a few messages from Kojo in chat talking about their experience. Now I stop and slowly try to sort out the situation, what I want. I would like to pause, sort it out efficiently, and keep moving. The key thing you want to do is not stop moving, keep going. Dude, that's so true. Yeah, don't stop, keep moving. That's true. It ties into not giving up and keep moving forward. It's a bit of a juggling act. However, that's where you cut up the situation into manageable chunks and deal with them one at a time. That's so true. I think if you're in a spot like that and you're just like, starting to freak out a little bit, that's a good way to look at it, Kojo, is like splitting it up into different pieces and digesting, working through one of those at a time. And that's a good way to do it too. And like you said, don't stop, keep moving, keep going, keep growing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Kojo. Yeah. That's a really wise way to look at like a larger, that's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. That is basically all I really want to touch on. And again, as Kojo did and I did, we looked at, what we're doing now and what we'd like to do in the future when we're overwhelmed, and maybe spend the next day or so thinking about that for yourself. And see, really run a diagnostic. Run a diagnostic on yourself. And be like, what do I do when I'm overwhelmed? And how effective is it? How effective is it? And if it's not very effective, what can I do? And how soon can I put it into action? Yeah. With that being said, I think today's conversation was very fruitful, definitely therapeutic for me to put some of this out there. So I appreciate you listening and or watching if you're on the stream. Thank you for all of your insight, Kojo, especially in the chat here. I really appreciate that. And yeah, my plans for the rest of the day, I'm hoping to record a video because tomorrow's Wednesday and I haven't prepared a video yet. So I'm going to do that. But before that, I think I'm going to invite myself to a little break today. Maybe grab some tea and relax for a minute before we move on with our day. Maybe just have a moment of quiet to ourselves today. Ooh, ow, it just got bright. With all of that, wow, it's really bright. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast and or watching. I appreciate you. I love you all. And I will see you very, very soon. Peace.